Morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason on this Monday. I hope it finds you well out there. I hope you had a great weekend. I was in Las Vegas, Sin City, for my one of my buddies turned 60. We had, it's weird. I have so many friends that have February birthdays. Two of them turned 60 this February. And I'll say, you know what? It was fine, right? We came back. You know, we're not huge gamblers, my wife and I, but you know, we'll do it if you know that's kind of where you're at. It's Vegas. We'll throw a few bucks at something. But we always like to say, okay, here's how much we're going to take, and if we come home with nothing, it's fine. Right, you know, we like to have a budget when we go to a place like that, and we actually came home with money. Now, doesn't mean we won, but we did not lose the allotted money, so it felt like winning. I'll say this: I miss the old Vegas. I do. It's so unaffordable. Really is the word that comes to mind. It used to be in Las Vegas, they gave you everything for cheap. Hotels were cheap. The food was cheap, right? Because they wanted you to gamble. And so they said, hey, we'll give you all this other stuff for next to nothing. Now nothing's cheap. Rooms aren't cheap. The food definitely is not cheap anymore. I mean, it's just not. It's more expensive in Vegas than like going to North Scottsdale. It's amazing how things have changed there, and even the tables. You know, there's no such thing. At least I couldn't find it. There's no such thing as a $5 table in Las Vegas anymore. A unicorn is like a $10 table. Most of the tables were $25 or more. You know, it just, I guess, Jason, if you want to think about inflation, Las Vegas is a great way to show you what inflation has done.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that like to gamble. I mean, it seems like every other commercial, if you turn the TV on, is some sports betting racket. So, I remember when I was a kid, I'd stay at the grandparents' house in Windsor for a week, right? And my grandpa was a World War II veteran, and he was always, it was funny, he was always explaining to me why it was okay for him to put some money on a game or put some money. He was always trying to, like, I think he was practicing on me, even though I didn't care that he was putting some money on something. But this is decades ago, but you know, he wanted to throw some money around and play, you know, bet on some sports games, and he's always trying to make sure it was okay with me, because I think the conversation was going to somebody else. And where we're at now, I mean, do you remember when gambling used to be taboo and it was like, maybe you shouldn't be doing that,
right? And
now it's all over the place, you know, the moral decay sort of thing, right?
Well, look at it. Come on, Vegas got a football team, they got a hockey team, right? I mean, that was. I remember I was in the heyday of, I guess, of my sports fanaticism growing up was probably when UNLV and Jerry Tarkanian, they were making that run. They had that few years, and they had Richard the Fixer Perry in the hot tub with Larry Johnson and Stacey Ogden, Greg Anthony, right? And of course now you think about the Fixer Perry. I go, maybe outside of fixing games, right? That's still, right, not allowed. But I heard that Pete Rose, they may, I mean, they had to wait till he was dead, I guess. But they may finally allow him to go into the Hall of Fame, is what I heard. But, these college athletes, they make, the good ones anyway, they can make small fortunes with NIL money now. It's, things have definitely changed, and we can argue whether they've changed for the better or not. You know, I thought all this technology was supposed to make things cheaper. What happened? right? What happened? Nothing is cheaper anymore. 800-951-0592. That is our toll-free number, of course. The thing that you buy when nothing's cheaper anymore, it's gold. Gold and silver, the physical delivery. That is what we do. The website at allamericangold.com. And again, gold doing what gold does. Right? Hey, we had last week was the first week all year that gold didn't end higher. First week all year. But just like any of the pullbacks, they don't last very long. This was maybe the longest one. I think we had like 2 or 3 days where gold went down. Up big today. We got the tariffs starting tomorrow. We've got jobs week this week, right? So we saw a jump in jobless claims at the end of last week. Are we going to get another one there? What is the government jobs report going to look like on Friday? And then, of course, we have tariffs. Like we said, ISM, it was out this morning. Not great if you were hoping for less inflation. The ISM survey across the board, inflation starting to pick up again. But we had interesting comments from Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, that we'll share. And then, of course, tomorrow, Trump makes his address to the nation. So here's the great part. Once again, another week where we'll have plenty to talk about. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592. A quick look in at the markets here. The first day of trading in the month of March. Right now, the Dow's down 50. Let's make it 60 now. The S&P is down 11. The NASDAQ is down 82. The 10-year note, pretty quiet here at 421. But gold recovering all of Friday. So at one point on Friday, gold was down like $50. Finished down just under $20. Right now, gold's up $30, 28.88. Silver up 62 cents as well. And again, the warning here: be diversified, be smart. A lot of people are like, you know what? Maybe you're one of those that, hey, I don't have all the excess cash sitting in my bank account. But I do have an IRA. I've got an old 401k from 3 jobs ago or whatever it may be. Calls, you can convert those or part. You don't have to even convert it all, right? I mean, if you got big money in there, you shouldn't, like we always say, don't ever put all your money in any one thing. That's a very risky proposition. But if you need to look into a gold and silver IRA, we can help you do that. Call us here at 800-951-0592. Interesting comments. We had some big hitters talk this weekend. We had Warren Buffett. We had Ray Dalio. And we had Scott Bessent, the new Treasury Secretary. Let's start with him. Because this was probably the least believable. But he was out on Sunday. I don't know if he was like Meet the Press or something like that. But he said that the tariffs are unlikely to raise inflation, in part because China will eat any tariffs that go on. And I'm just like, okay, 10% maybe, 20%, not a chance. Now, is China going to pay the tariffs? Are these companies going to pay? Yes. And here's the problem. Most of the companies that are going to pay the tariffs are going to be U.S. companies that just happen to make stuff in China. I mean, That's ultimately what is going on now. Could China manipulate their currency? Well, they've already done that. They've weakened the Chinese currency. They can't weaken it 20%. Then with the tariffs that are supposed to start tomorrow, he kind of just really didn't talk about it. Saying that on Face the Nation, well, now after he said, hey, it's not going to raise inflation, then he said, well, we don't know yet. So, well, which one is it? Is it not? Or is it? Well, we don't know yet. It's path dependent. Path dependent? What does that mean? What does path dependent mean? I don't know. What is the path that the product takes to get here? I'm not sure. But he just reiterated, I'm not worried about China. They're built up for exporting. They will pay the tariffs. Well, yeah. All the companies are going to pay the tariffs. I mean, we know that. The thing about
actually,
it's
the consumer. It's the consumer that pays the tariffs. That's what's going to end up happening. It's the consumer.
Well, he's trying to say, no, well, it's going to be okay,
I think the idea is that these companies have some sort of margin that they can squeeze. I think that's the whole thing about this tariff thing is what kind of margin do the American or other Chinese companies or wherever, how much can they squeeze their margin down? Everyone's going to have to tighten the belt. I have a feeling there's going to be no belt tightening coming from out of this country. I think that the margins will stay the same and the consumer will pay it.
So, interesting, right? I guess, and I get it, right? Well, I mean, what can he really say, right? Right? As the Treasury Secretary, he almost has to kind of make it as good as possible. Well, not to be outdone, Warren Buffett had some things to say about tariffs. Tariffs are actually, and then he stops, he goes, we have a lot of experience with them. So when you look at Berkshire Hathaway, I mean, they have insurance, right? That's a big part. They have railroads. So tariffs are huge when it comes to railroads, manufacturing, right? Energy, retail, right? These are the big holdings of Berkshire. So he does have a lot of experience with it. They're like an act of war to some degree. Now, I thought that was an interesting choice of words. Over time, they are a tax on goods. I mean, the tooth fairy doesn't pay them. So, kind of saying, Jason, hey, I don't care what everyone says, right? But these tariffs are not getting magically paid by somebody, right? There's no magic beans. There's no tooth fairy. Santa Claus isn't going to pay them. And Warren Buffett firmly sits in the side of, hey, eventually it is going to be paid by the consumer, Jason.
That's how it always is. The end user, right, always pays the price. A company never pays for taxes or pays for tariffs. The company doesn't do that. That's anybody who owns a business knows you add up all your expenses and then you pay. You charge a little more than that for your profit. It's the simplest thing. Economics is made to be so confusing, right, Joe? It's really all about pluses and minuses. You can add multiplication and division and algebra and calculus if you want to add all that stuff in there. And you can have the Federal Reserve say, well, we have these very complicated math procedures. And it all comes down to how much is coming in, how much is going out. That's all it is. And the person paying at the bottom, the end consumer pays for it. Whoever buys the Apple phone pays the entire amount. That's just the way it's going to be. The tariff's just going to make it more. Now, if the Chinese companies have some sort of margin that they want to, if they feel like their sales are going to drop off like a rock, and then look, the consumer in America is having trouble buying stuff now. So maybe, right, Joe, maybe the Chinese companies will bear some of the weight. And this is that one thing I think we talked about last week, where if A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H all works, then the tariffs are going to be a miracle, right? But there's just too many things that have to work to make it successful. But I don't know, maybe we'll pay less of a higher price.
The auto companies certainly seem to think that that's not happening, right? Hey, get ready. It's going to cost, depending on the vehicle, $8,000 to $12,000 more, right? That's what the tariffs are going to do. It's interesting today. Nothing. I haven't heard a word about tomorrow. So as we sit here right now, 25% on Mexico and Canada, 10% on Canadian energy. So right now I'm going to assume that's what it is. I was hoping maybe we'd get some more exclusions. Haven't seen them yet. Doesn't mean we won't get them. Just means they haven't said that there's going to be any. Something else very interesting, we're talking about, so we've got what? About 11 days to get this budget done. Right? And then, the government will be in default and blah, blah. But they can always kick the can down the road and do all of those things. But when it came to the budget, they've decided, well, I shouldn't say they've decided yet. Here's what they're considering. It doesn't look very good. So, right, the Republicans in the House passed this budget. They squeaked it by, but it's not aesthetically pleasing. When you do the amount for the tax cuts, and this is just extending. Remember, Trump promised, hey, no tax on tips and no tax on overtime and Social Security, right? Made all these other things. But it doesn't look good to do all of this Doge cutting and then end up still with much higher deficits. So they are considering a little word change. They want to change the Trump tax cut, which, by the way, that was in 2017. It was supposed to expire this year. That was part of the deal, because otherwise it would have looked, he couldn't have gotten it passed the last time, because it makes the deficit look so bad going forward. If they rewrite the wording to say that the Trump tax cuts are essentially the law of the land. In other words, get rid of the language that they expire. Then they could say, well, see, now we don't have to say that it's going to add $4.5 trillion to the federal deficit over the next 10 years. We can just leave it out. In other words, we could say that the Trump tax cut extensions will add zero to the debt, even though it's going to add $4.5 trillion. Simply, we're just not going to count it. And then that way, Jason, look how much better the budget will look. I mean, pay no attention that it really doesn't look better, but this is one of the things that they're considering, so it looks better. The headlines will look better on TV.
TV always tries to make things seem okay when they're not, and then they try to make things seem much worse when they're actually bad, right? Right? The emergency is always bigger than it actually is, and then when things are not, when things really should be looked at and fixed, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it, right, Joe? So, yeah, that's TV. Wow.
You talk about what are these guys doing? Really? I don't know that they're going to do it, but it sure looks like they're definitely talking about doing it, which is hey, let's just pretend that they were never going to expire, and then we don't have to admit how much it's going to add to the budget deficit. We'll just pretend it didn't. Of course it will. That got Ray Dalio up in arms, saying that the United States is getting ready to suffer what he calls a financial heart attack, likening it to clogged arteries with plaque building up, and that the United States is now at high risk for a heart attack, and talking about U.S. government spending and how out of control that it has become, that it's, listen to this, he's saying, Jason, we may only have a couple of years, according to Ray Dalio, before the heart attack hits. And that's going to be something where, again, this is what we worry about when we tell you to be diversified, right? Boom and bust, call it what you want. Heart attack, debt spiral, right? It really doesn't matter what words you use. The effects of it are all the same. And then let's not forget Friday. Wow, what a fireworks show that was with Zelensky in the Oval Office. Have we ever seen anything like that? I think half the country was like, yeah, get him. And the other half of the country was like, oh, my gosh. Well, certain European countries, they didn't like it very much. We'll talk about that. Did you know that over 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe and Jason on this Monday. Gold's up almost $31 here, $28.89. Silver's up 60 cents, 31. What was it? 31.60, 31.70. My bad, 31.70 on silver this morning. Today, you know what? We got a cool little special. 1 gram gold bars, and they're going to be in their little cards. So this makes it easy, because a gram bar of gold, very, very thin. Tiny. And yeah, it's no bigger than a fingernail and super thin. But it comes. These ones will come in their what we call them carded, assorted assay packages, if you will, at $115. And I remember, like, what a 10th ounce. I remember 10th ounce being like in the 50s. I know Y2K. For those of you who remember, Eric, you read that was Y2K. But you know what? 10th ounce were like $32. I mean, I'm seriously, it was insane.
I'm surprised they were that much. I'm surprised they were that much. Holy cow!
Yeah, and right now a 10th ounce American Gold Eagle's $350.
Yep.
Right. So that used to be, hey, that's the cheapest gold you can own. Well, a 1 gram bar at $115, and to give you an idea, the 1 gram bar, you need 31 of them essentially to get to an ounce. So it's almost the same price point as 10th ounce. If you bought 31 of them, it'd be $35.65. If you bought 10th ounce, it'd be $3,500. So about the same price as a 10th ounce. Of course, we're cheaper than anybody else out there on them. But if you want some 1 gram bars, these are great gifts, right? They're cool to look at, and I love them in the cards because the cards like a quarter of a sheet of paper, it'd be about this size, and then the bar you can look at it, touch it, handle it. I mean, they even stamp right on the bar and everything. Minting has come a long way for sure, Jason.
Yeah, talk about the most hideable $115. I saw a video where a guy was hiding his 1 gram gold bars. He took apart a calculator, just a little box calculator. And in the electronics, he finds the little slots to put the gram gold bars in, seals it back up, because if someone robs the house, the little calculator, that's one of the things. No one's gonna steal the calculator, right?
No one's taking the calculator.
This guy had like 20 of these 1 gram gold bars, like in the little slots inside the calculator board there. And it looks like a little piece of brass, and nobody would even know for sure that was gold unless you looked at it really closely. And he put the thing back together, and he's got several tenths of an ounce of gold inside a calculator, when no one's ever going to. And plus, it's a usable item. You know that's your gold calculator, and so if you want to hide it, just be careful, because this is something that could be sucked up by the vacuum cleaner pretty easy.
Yeah, right. Wow, these ones are going to be in their cards versus the loose ones. The loose ones, boy, you can absolutely do that. 800-951-0592. I will say on the half-empty cup, we will play I don't think anybody missed it. How could you? I mean, it was everywhere on Friday. People were sending it out to each, emailing, texting, it was all over social media, right? I mean, and like I said, it just depended on where you sat as to whether you thought it was a good thing or a bad thing, right? And over the weekend, Norway refused to, Norway's a stop where, this case it was a submarine, but like our military goes and kind of fills, it's like a gas station for the U.S. military, right? Okay, let's refuel in Norway. Said, we're not going to let you. And I'm like, wow, really? Look at Norway getting all big. But you can see, you saw all the European nations trying to rally around Ukraine. And Jason, this is how things all of a sudden get out of hand, right? Next thing you know, somebody says, well, you can't do this, United States. And then, Donald Trump's like, oh, really? Okay. That's how you want to play it, right? How about this, right? And definitely interesting to see. Here's the one thing I did like. Europe, you want to spend money on Ukraine? Great. Do it. Go for it. At least it won't be us spending the money. The funny part is Zelensky's still saying, nope, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want any peace. So we'll see, Jason. The war drums. Maybe are we going to cut Ukraine off? I don't know. But it sure feels like, at least right now, we were worried that Trump was going to put the pressure on the Russians. He's actually putting it on the Ukrainians. He is, and his comment made a lot of sense. Hey, you don't hold any cars, you're losing the war, right? And we need to get this peace thing figured out quick. And me trying to leverage the Russians, they're winning, so that's not going to work, right?
Yeah, it's going to be entertaining. We're going to play a 9-minute piece, because what they're showing you, especially on certain channels, they're showing you the argument. You got to watch the few, and we're going to play the few minutes right before the argument happens, because there's a lot to talk about. And Zelensky, he's an interesting dude. He's a lot more interesting today than he was last week. Let's just say that. I think he's a puppet president like all the rest of them, but he's seemingly fighting for his country a lot more than I thought he would. That exchange is fascinating, and at first I thought it was completely staged. I still think it was kind of staged. I think the fact that they put those people out, the vice president. I mean, Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. He didn't have anything to say. I mean, J.D. Vance was doing all. He's the one that sparked this thing, and that was supposed to be the Secretary of State. This is geopolitics. That's not the vice president. So I think it was set up to have this moment, Joe, for sure. And They got it, didn't they?
Boy, they certainly did. They certainly did. Patriot Radio News Hour. Gold keeps rounding up 35 now. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592. Joe and Jason on this Monday. Gold's up 35. I think TV it's up like 55, but it doesn't matter. Up 35 right now. 28.93. Gold just doesn't seem like 2,800 at all. We kind of just jumped right over it, and every time gold gets to 28 and change, it seems like it just comes roaring right back. I think the big thing, huge growth in ETFs all over the world, including, people forget China, they're still developing. They just recently created a gold ETF for their citizens. By the way, the first 3 weeks of February, over 17 metric tons. It will be a record for the month. They've never done more than 20 metric tons. Of course, it's new. And then on top of that, insurance companies in China now. Hey, we're going to set some gold aside. The Dow had a big rally at the end of the day on Friday. The Dow was up a few hundred. Then the Zelensky-Trump thing happened. Then it was down, and then it kind of rallied back, right? Made a big move late. Right now down 200 points. The S&P down 30. The NASDAQ down 130. And again, those 1 gram bars, the 1 gram bars at $115 today. Put them away. 800-951-0592 as again the physical gold demand just keeps running. It just keeps going. And then, of course, tomorrow we'll get the tariffs. I think we'll get JOLTS. The JOLTS job survey, but the more job cuts announced today. Who was it today? Gosh, there's 3 or 4 more. I don't have HP's cutting 2,000 jobs. Grubhub cutting 23% of its corporate offices. And then how about this one? Auto loan delinquencies. Now this is going to be subprime. People don't realize how many people are subprime in borrowing. And I don't think they understand how big of a market this is. 60-day delinquencies hit 6.56 in December, the highest level ever recorded. That includes the financial crisis. Now, for prime, it rose, but Jason, it's only at 0.62. So this is, it's still you remember Ben Bernanke? Well, it's just a subprime crisis when he was talking about housing. Well, it starts that way. It's going to be interesting how these layoffs play out here. There's people trying to extrapolate how many people are going to be losing jobs all over the country. And you're hearing about people, I work for this department, but I live in Florida, right? I work for that department, but I live in Colorado. I live in these people getting fired all over the country, not just in the D.C. area. So we'll keep an eye on this. It's one of those things where this is usually how things start here, because the people that have the worst credit, they're one of two things. They're not very good with their money, right? Obviously, they've got bad credit. Or they had some bad luck. That happens, right? A medical, or I lost my job, what have you. But when it starts creeping into the prime, then we'll know that there's going to be a bigger issue. And then on top of that, something I don't think the Trump administration wanted to see, energy prices are going to go up another 6% in 2025. So, Jason, this 2-3% inflation narrative really not working out very well, especially when you talk about things that you need, right? Hey, I got to pay the power bill. It's been really, really cold in the United States this winter, with the exception of, like, Arizona. Arizona's been beautiful pretty much all winter long, but everywhere else it's been really cold, and that has driven up electricity prices. And, of course, let's not forget AI. They're going at breakneck speed. So a few other things for us, as if we needed more things for us to keep our eye on. But I think really this is going to be a big week. We will get Jay Powell's going to talk this week. I don't know what he's going to say, or if he's going to say a whole lot about interest rates, if he's going to say anything about ending quantitative tightening. If he's going to say anything about jobs, we'll see. And I think the big jobs numbers, they start tomorrow with JOLTS. Because I don't see a lot of companies saying we're hiring right now. I'm just not seeing it, right? What are we seeing? We're seeing layoffs starting to creep up here. Then Wednesday, we'll get ADP. That's the private sector job number. We'll see if any of that has been affected yet by the government layoffs. Thursday's jobless claims. So we saw a big bump last Thursday. My guess is, are we going to go even higher? Are we going to go into the 250, 260,000? We'll see. And then, of course, the government jobs number, the February government's jobs number. Remember, during the Biden administration, the government was like 1/3 of all the hiring, every month. So I'm assuming that's not going to be there. How low will that number be? Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason will be back to wrap it up right after this. 800-951-0592. Final segment on this Monday. Things start to heat up tomorrow and really the rest of the week as the jobs will come to the forefront here. And I think that's kind of the worry, is what is the effect of the government and DOGE with their job cuts in the overall economy. Remember, they didn't really start in earnest till the week before, so they're gaining speed here. I saw a number yesterday that said 30,000 people across different agencies got laid off in a single day from the government last week. So, Jason, I think this is going to be what people are going to look at. If we get some really weak numbers here, we're probably going to see, we'll be talking about, okay, is gold going to break 3,000? And of course, rate cuts will come into play, and wanting the Federal Reserve to kind of reverse course again on this. So this is a big week. There's no doubt about it. I think this is a big week. And then next week, you've got that bill. The government's got to come up with some kind of a budget. And are they going to do the accounting gimmick to kind of make it appear like it's not going to be that bad, but it looks like it's going to be that bad?
You've been saying for months and months and even a couple of years that to get those rate reductions, you'd have to have the job losses. Got to have the job losses, and
got to have them.
I saw the numbers that for every government job loss, there's 2 contractors that are suffering from it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like if Trump wants to get his rate reductions, let's fire some government. There's so many people hired by the government. If you don't get job losses there, maybe you don't get the job losses you need to really create the economic strife necessary for these rate reductions. So it's happening. We're firing a bunch of government employees. Contractors that are depending upon government contracts are being slowed. And we might just get those rate reductions with a whole bunch of job losses.
I'm going to say this, too. How about we're not talking about the border either. I mean, hardly anybody crossed. I think the number was down to like 8,000 from like 300,000. People got to lose jobs, right? Those people had to get fed. They had to get processed. They had to stay. I don't know. But I got to believe that is having an effect as well. So we'll see. I think we're going to get a little more clarity. The thing is, it's still early. Because like I said, the job cuts really didn't start coming until a couple weeks ago. I mean, there was a lot of talk of jobs being lost in early February. They didn't start, though, till like the middle of February. So, again, a little clearer picture for sure. And I think it's going to be very, they talk about data dependency. I think data is going to be a big one here. And, of course, my fear all along was we're going to get the job loss, but we're still going to have higher prices. And right now, Jason, that is what we're looking at right now for sure. The prices are still going up. Everybody from insurance companies to the energy companies to the car companies right now. We'll see tomorrow. Will there be any exception to the tariffs? So far, still nothing. 1/10 ounce. Or 1/10 ounce. 1 gram bars. I got to get used to saying 1 gram bars. $115 at 800-951-0592. Jason and I coming right back.